All right, so in this video, we're going to go over sample question 16 from the Society of Actuaries ExamP list of sample questions. Just letting you know, the answer choices were printed out incorrectly. They accidentally printed different questions answer choices, so I've just written them to the side here rather than reprinting the whole thing. So the question reads, an insurance company determines that N, the number of claims received in a week, is a random variable with the probability of N equaling some specific N is equal to 1 over 2 raised to the N plus 1 power, where N is greater than 0, right? Which would make sense. You can't have, -3 claims. You can't have a negative amount of claims. The company also determines that the number of claims received in a given week is independent of the number of claims received in any other week. What we need to do is calculate the probability that that exactly 7 claims will be received during a given 2-week period. Okay? So, where do we begin? Well, the probability they gave us is the number of claims received in a week. And it's asking us, all right, calculate the probability that 7 claims will be received in a 2-week period. So let's first figure out all the possible ways that could happen. Now, let's say this is week 1, and this is week 2. Well, if in week 1 we had 0 claims, we must have had 7 claims in week 2. If in week 1 we had 1 claim, there must be 6 in week 2, because we're looking for the possibility that we have exactly 7. And then if we have 2 in week 1, that means we must have had 5 in week 2, and so on. Just listing all the possibilities. Okay, and here I've kind of inadvertently made kind of a chart, right? So what I'm going to want to put here is the probability that W1 plus W2 is equal to that number, is equal to the random variable x. Right, where here x is, or actually I could write this a bit better, where, let me write this actually to the side real small, the probability of W1 equaling x and the probability of W2 equaling y, right, where these numbers here are x and y. So I'm going to put the probability to the side. So how do we calculate the individual probabilities of these, right? Because the idea here is that we're going to get this situation, or we're going to get this situation, or we're going to get this situation. So we're doing a union, right? And what that would mean is if we can figure out the individual probability of each of these, it looks like 8 different situations, we just need to add them all up together. Just find the total. So how do we first get the probability of simply having 0 claims in week 1 and 7 claims in week 2? Well, the second it tells us this, the number of claims received in a given week is independent of their number of claims received in any other week. This would mean, and this is something you should be familiar with, if you have 2 events that are independent, right? If A and B are independent, the probability of A intersection B is equal to the probability of A multiplied by the probability of B. So, what is the probability in week 1 that the number of claims you have is 0? Well, that would be 1/2, right? using this probability given, and then 1 over 2 plus 1 over 2 to the 8th. Sorry, multiplied by 1 over 2 to the 8th power, which is equal to 1 over 2 to the 9th, which would be 1 over 512. And we just do the same calculation for each of these situations, okay? This would be 1 over 2 to the 2nd times 1 over 2 to the 7th, okay? So I'm just going to quickly try to do the calculation for all of these. 2 to the 2nd times 1 over 2 to the 7th, and that's also, wait, something about that just seems off. That's 1 over 512. And then doing the same calculation for this, I'm guessing that it's going to also be 1 over 512. So that's going to be 1 over 2 to the 2 plus 1, 1 over 2 to the 3rd, plus 1 over 2 to the 5 plus 1, 1 over 2 to the 6th. And that also happens to be 1 over 512. And if you were to calculate all of these, you would find that they're all 1 over 512. Now, to do the union, right, to figure out, okay, what is the probability that I have week 1 be 0, week 2 be 7, or week 1 be 1, week 2 be 6, or week 1 be 2, week 2 be 5 claims, is to just sum them all up, right? So I'm just doing 1 over 512 added to itself 8 times, so that'd just be the same as multiplying by 8. So the total, right, the summation, is going to be equal to 1 over 512 times 8, which is 1 over 64. That was actually a lot easier than it initially seemed. And that would be my final answer, right? Which lines up with the answer choice 1, 2, 3, D, right? 1 over 64. Right, so not a lot was needed in order to solve this question. What are the major takeaways? Well, you got to know that when you have independent events, their intersection is equal to the probability of event A multiplied by the probability of event B. All right. When you're dealing with discrete probability, which that's what this would fall into, right? You don't have 0.5 claims. It's easy to break down into different cases. So that's kind of what this chart had me do here. Right? I needed the total to be 7. How many different cases do I have where my total claims within 2 weeks is 7? Well, week 1 is 0, week 2 is 7, all the way down. That's what this chart described. All right. Hopefully that made this question seem a lot easier. If there's anything you want me to clear up, throw a question down in the comments. If you want to check out more ExamP sample questions, I have a playlist. And if this video helped you out, give it a like, because that definitely helps me out. But other than that, good luck, guys.